are back for another edition of the Hockey Nation Live Show. This is the old days because we are only me and Michael DEVELLANO recording a video for you guys. The reason why we don't do the HNL Tonight Show because we have some problem with internet, so we decided to go recording me and Michael and talking about the Detroit Red Wings for the upcoming season. We know Michael is going to cover this team a lot for the year number 3 for the Hockey Nation Live Show. So welcome back, Michael. 3 years ago, almost like 3 years ago, we started this channel, and now we are back. And different ways you are, I believe, in East. You're on the East, Charlotte, Carolina, you are today. And I'm in Thailand.
Yeah.
So
that's in Thailand. Who would have ever thought that?
Yeah, me too. I did not thought 3 years ago we'd be in Thailand to make a recording with Michael DEVELLANO. But look, we have a lot of things coming around for the season in hockey. And the fact you cover the Detroit Red Wings first, you're a big fan of them and you really know what's going on around. I said, why not talking about the Detroit today and see what is coming for them? Because I think this is really the turnover or the turnaround of this franchise since Steve Yzerman been with the organization. And maybe before we start, maybe talk a little bit about the Yzerman plan and send you really, a little bit more about Detroit. What do you think about Steve Yzerman?
Well, I mean, I think last year was positive because a lot of the guys that we were all itching to see, the young guys, got an opportunity, whether it was at the AHL, but mostly the NHL level. So, we saw Michael Rasmussen reintroduced at the NHL level. We saw the debut of Moritz Seider, which, I mean, suddenly you've got a Norris caliber young 20-year-old defenseman on the team. And we saw Lucas Raymond make the team. We also saw stints from, Zadina got opportunity. Whether that panned out or not is another question. We saw, in addition to that, like they drafted Simon Edmondson, they drafted Sebastian Cossa. We got Jonathan Berggren coming over to North America last year, and he had a phenomenal season in the AHL. So we saw a lot of guys. João Veleno got an extended stint, and I thought did very well at the NHL level. So we got to see a lot of guys get an opportunity, which I think we were all waiting for. And we saw them move on from players that kept dragging on, and he's exited a lot of contracts. I thought we had a good season from Pia Suter. So now, after those moves, I think he had a very, very aggressive offseason.
Talking about the offseason, let's talk about his move he did offseason. Signature, trade, and I think he have a really good offseason.
I would agree with that. Last year we saw him. The question in Detroit, in my mind, has always been goaltending. Last year he grabbed Nedeljkovic, and we saw kind of stints of where he was very good coming over from Carolina. He seems to have done it again, and I think he made a really smart move in bringing in Ville Husso in the offseason. Ville Husso was part of the 2015 World Junior Championship team from Finland, and people kind of forget how dominant that team was with players like Rantanen, Patrick Laine, Sebastian Aho, and Ville Husso was really the backstopper of that really talented group. He had a phenomenal year, I thought, last year with St. Louis, and he kind of, struggled a little bit in the playoffs, but came around. This is a big goalie. He's technically very sound, and he's athletic. So when you go back and you watch him with St. Louis, you think, oh, maybe he got lucky with really good defensemen. But he made some pretty highlight reel saves and really backstopped them for about 40 games last year. So suddenly between him and Nedeljkovic, I think it's funny because St. Louis signs Thomas Greiss, who kind of struggled at times over the last few years with Detroit. So it's almost like a trade for these two players. And I think Detroit comes out with a 25-year-old goaltender that might be just, on the precipice of being at least a 40, 50 game a year guy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think this is the time of the transition when I said that, because they are waiting, right, for Sebastian Cossa, maybe the future of this franchise as a goaltender if he reach his full potential, right? So at some point you have to make a choice between Nedeljkovic and Husso. And I think Husso signed a 3 or 4 year deal, and Nedeljkovic have a 3 years, I believe. So it will be interesting what they're going to have the choice, because Cossa would not be surprised to show up like maybe in 2 years with this organization at some point, at least to have a couple of games with an NHL.
I think that they're going to have to get him to the sooner than later, Pierre. He's not challenged in the WHL, in my opinion. And we saw at the World Juniors that he
Yeah.
was not the number one goalie for Canada. And I think he's got serious parts of his game that he needs to work at the pro level. Because if he continues to compete at the WHL level, I don't know if he's going to get better. He's a big goalie, as we know, 6'7", but he has a lot of holes in his structural game that cause problems. And you saw that at the level of World Juniors. I think that's going to get accentuated. He's going to have to eat a couple years on the AHL.
Yeah.
I will make this one comment. I think what we also saw was his counterpart, Jesper Wallstedt, who was ranked ahead of him. I got to be honest, I'm a little bit envious that he's not in Detroit because I think this guy's a year away from being in the NHL. But that aside, they have a very legitimate, potential number one starter prospect. I just think it's going to take 4 or 5 years.
Yep, so right. Possible it be that level again, Charlie. You remind me a little bit like the Ben Bishop or where he start when he was not ready yet.
Exactly.
You can see those kind of old. He was get beat on the left. His T push was not always there. So I think that's kind of the player he can become in a show. It'll be interesting. But this is about not only the only move Ville Uso, but they have a lot of players like that. I would like you tell us a bit more about the one you maybe surprised they signed or maybe a little bit disappointed or a little bit that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, so we saw, they moved on from Mark Stahl in the defense. They finally move on from Justin Abdelkader. I think those are good things. We saw the level that Moritz Seider plays at. We've got Simon Edvinsson coming, and he had a phenomenal World Junior Championship, and he's at the tournament. But, in the meantime, they signed Ben Sherratt. They signed Oli Mata, who they're hoping will have a bit of a bounce back year. We saw Gustav Lindstrom integrate into the lineup, and I think he's legitimately a 5'6" defenseman. So there's some definite veteran presence on this team. Ben Sherratt should be able to pair with Moritz Seider on the first pairing. And we saw Philip Ronick, I think, is an excellent number 2, number 3 defenseman in the NHL on the right side. So on the second pairing, if you have him with a resurgent Oli Mata, they're in pretty good shape. And then Simon Edvinsson, I would be shocked, Pierre, if this guy's not in the NHL. I don't know if you know, but they drafted him at 6'4", and he's come into the rookie camp at 6'6".
And he has an amazing, great year. He was the player of the defenseman in Europe, like Zeder was the year before. So look, this would be surprised he become another Maurice Zeder 2.0 at his first year.
Yep, and he is a phenomenal skater, Pierre. He's a big guy. I think the knock against him before, I believe personally, like, it's just physical. Like what we saw where they're like, oh, maybe he doesn't have the offensive upside. Well, he got 19 points in 44 games against men.
Yeah.
And he's bigger than he was. So I don't know. I'd be shocked if he's not on the opening night roster. And if he goes to the AHL, it won't be for very long. It's going to be very hard to keep him.
It may be the adaptation of the small rink could be something, but again, he's so good on the cap control, Michael. He jumped from the red line and he can hit someone very hard. So, like you said, worst case, there's going to be maybe a couple of weeks and down and then coming back. And we know how the Detroit develop their players, so how they are really patient with them usually. So that would be something I would not be surprised to get there. I think you're absolutely right about this. And this is new direction in NHL. The youngest, they are becoming young and younger with, it would be interesting to see many time Owen Power versus Simon Edvinsson. Honestly, 2 big guys, 6'6", both of them. It'll be fun to watch for sure.
What is the difference between Owen Power and Simon Edvinsson? It is very small.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. I think Edvinsson a bit more physical.
Maybe.
Yep. I would not be, I think he is. I think Power a little bit more, transition a bit better, possible. Yeah. But otherwise, it's 2 great defensemen. It's the new generation of hockey, and that's great and for all the hockey fans for sure. But they are not the only one. Ben Sherratt was another one as a defenseman. They have a mix of the youngest and the veterans, I think. A little bit longer, a little bit shocked the money he gave to him, but I think Eisenman believe on him. I think he will stabilize the defense, very physical, and he was 6'3", have a good year with Montreal with 9 goals. Did not fit well with the Florida Panthers, but I think now if he's on the right chair, I think he's going to be a good asset for the Detroit Red Wings. And I think he could become a solid partner to Maurice Zeter if they match both together.
Yep, I would agree with that. Ben Sherratt's pretty versatile. We saw him in the run with Montreal to the Cup final. He was invaluable, and he's been, an important part, an underrated part of the Winnipeg Jets before. Like, they really missed this guy.
Yeah.
So I think that Ben Sherratt is, at 4.75 for 4 years, it seems maybe expensive, but it's not insurmountable. Like, you're basically giving Ben Sherratt the money you gave Justin Abdelkader. So you don't really care too much. Like, you're like, this is an upgrade. In my opinion, he's younger, he's bigger, he's stronger. So I think it's just an upgrade.
Yeah, absolutely right about it. It's not too bad. Maybe his last year, like his contract could be a little bit of problem. But at the end, at that moment, maybe Detroit will be one the top 10 team in NHL. You maybe need at that moment Sherratt more as a 5 and 6 in your lineup.
Correct.
They will do some great job for them. But it was not the only one, because I think they make other big splash with Andrew Copp and David Perron. And you can talk a little bit more about both of them.
So I think Andrew Copp, for me, was a bit of a surprise how much they gave him. He signs $5.6 million. I believe it's 5 years, Pierre. He's played with Dylan Larkin at Michigan. So these guys know each other. He's a very, very versatile player. He's a strong 200-foot player. He does all the little things that a coach would want. I don't think he's flashy, but he does have some offense, and he can finish off around the net. I don't know if he's an amazing puck distributor. To me, ideally, Andrew Copp is a third-line centerman. But I think that here he might slot into the second line for a couple years. And it puts the onus on guys like Rasmussen, Veleno to really take the next step. And it gives them some time to see if Jonathan Berggren can steal that spot from him. He's very solid. You're going to rely upon him, and he's something they don't have.
That's satisfied the line, the center. When you think about Larkin, then you have Copp, Rasmussen, this line is getting stronger and stronger as a center position for them.
And what do you do with Pius Suter? Because Pius Suter had a pretty good year, but now you've got a lot of big bodies down the middle. If you go Larkin, Copp, Rasmussen, Veleno, it might be tough to keep Pius Suter at center.
Again, Copp can play winger if you need it, it's necessary. So for me, Copp, it reminds me a lot of the Goodrow, the Coleman, the forechecker. And I think at some point you need that kind of players when you get the next level. And I think this the reason why maybe Yzerman look there. Maybe they have more confidence where he can turn around to become a 20 goal per year and maybe a 50 point per season.
Yeah, and he's a leadership quality guy, so I think they're looking at that character part. In addition to that, you mentioned David Perron. David Perron's coming off an excellent season in St. Louis. I was kind of surprised they didn't sign him, but I know they're a little bit crunched at the cap. So a big pickup for this team. Will he be able to reproduce the numbers that he had with Ryan O'Reilly? I don't even think you worry about that. He's a highly skilled veteran. He's in phenomenal shape. He's won a Stanley Cup. This is a veteran leadership player that has high skill and can play with high skill players, but he can also do the gritty things. And he can play all three forward positions, Pierre.
Power play?
I think David Perron, power play, penalty kill. He can win faceoffs if you need him. He can play left or right wing. He's a very versatile player, kind of like Andrew Copp.
You're absolutely right about this. It's a prototype of what Detroit and then Yzerman, he remember the time he was at the beginning of his career with the Luc Robitaille, the Brett Hall, the veterans signed at when they become 33, 35 years old, and just bring some kind of leadership for the youngest to learn different things. And I think this is a great asset for the Detroit Red Wings and the player the transition. But again, he's a machine of consistency, Michael. Look, his career is a 25 goal year after year, and he's not like been hurt a lot. I know he missed a couple of years, but the guy is work. By the way, he's on the French station this week. I can't wait to listen to him. He's excited to go back in Detroit, and I think he's going to have a kind of again, he's been great with the Blues, but the Blues want to go give the money more as the Thomas and Giroux. That's what he did the last 2 weeks. You
Well,
can see
yeah,
the
we saw
signature.
Kirkland Thomas.
And they want to turn around this, and they have to sign Ryan O'Reilly with it. This coming really demanding and hard
Yeah.
for the the Blues. Definitely, we're going to talk about them a little bit later. But I think for me, Perron is a great signature at this moment where they at the Detroit Red Wings.
I would agree with you, Pierre. I think it's a definite step up, and he's very versatile, and it gives the coach the opportunity to use him in different situations. The other signing that I think is notable is Dominic Kubalik. Several years ago, when he was in Chicago, Pierre, you and I watched him in the the extended playoff season during COVID, and most nights he was the most dangerous player in Chicago, and that's what the team with like Patrick Kane. And I think we really thought, hey, this is a 30, 40 goal guy that's going to be really scary to deal with, and he really regressed. And I'm curious how much of that has to do with what was going on in Chicago. I think that he's going to get an opportunity to show that he can still score at a big pace in the NHL. And I believe he's very capable, unless something weird has happened, of being a top 6 player in this NHL.
You can see the last 2 years over there, although the fact they bring Cat, I think those young guests never been after they make a good year. I think Kubalik was a good year, the Kurasev, if I can recall it. I think Kurasev a good year at the same time, and both of them after that they struggle. And then Kirby Dak never reached his full potential. It's a really organization for the last 3 years. They've been rock and roll, up and down, and I think that's maybe affect its front players. I think Kubalik inside of a role to play and confidence and trust. I think his best friend in this organization could become Derek Lalonde for him to be that kind of person. It could become look, it's another one came from Chicago. You just talk about him earlier, Sutter. And look, Sutter, what he did with the Red Wings last year.
Very well.
Yep.
Right. He's a good 200-foot player. He's offensively consistent. You know,
Big
you can
body.
put him in different situations. Is he? I thought Pius Suter's small.
No, I'm talking about Kubalik.
Oh, Kubalik's big.
Yeah, I think it's a 6'2".
He's big. He is. He's 6'2". He can shoot the puck, and he can play left or right wing, Pierre. So you see consistently, you got Kopp that can play multiple positions. You got Perron, and you got Kubalik. So the coach has got no, in my opinion, excuses. You got pieces you can plug into different places and find chemistry.
Talking about the coach, let's go talk about him because it was the next subject about the Detroit Red Wings. After 6-7 years, Bashil was with this team. They Steve Yzerman decided to go to another direction, and we know the connection of Steve Yzerman with the Tampa Bay Lightning and been with this organization for many years with Cooper and Lalonde and other coach. He bring Lalonde with this organization. Now he maybe believe Lalonde is the right man for the Detroit Red Wings. He just gave him a contract. What do you think about this hire by the Detroit Red Wings?
There is some risk in this move. I mean, I think for people, he knows and trusts Derek Lalonde. I don't think he really got to work with him, but he was. I think he was part of bringing him into Tampa, and obviously Tampa spoke very highly of him. They interviewed multiple candidates for this role, but you got the feeling that he was looking for the next John Cooper. And if he's apprenticed under John Cooper, he's betting that with the right patience and time, that this guy has the right preparation, that he can be very successful as an NHL head coach. He's seen how you prepare to win a Stanley Cup, and that's what he's banking on. Now, that being said, there's a little bit of risk there, Pierre. He's never been a head coach at the NHL level. You know as well as I do, we see some of these young coaches come in. Let's use Sheldon Keefe as an example, where he's got all the horses in the world, and he gets out coached in key games. And that's the risk you run. Is this guy capable of going head-to-head with the best coaches in the world? Now, that expectation is not on him right now. He's trying to get this team into the playoffs eventually. So I don't think the pressure's on him there. The question is long-term, does it work? Is he the guy to get them over the hump? But, he obviously checks all the boxes that Stevie Yzerman wants.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And because you talk about Keefe and maybe DJ Smith, both of them, maybe Keefe. Yep. Keefe never been in the NHL before he jumped in the NHL. He would been with the Marlins. Compared to Lalonde, the way what we heard a lot, Lalonde, is his connection with the players, the conversation, the teaching. Right. And I think that would be a great asset for them. And then one coach we don't talk enough And Detroit Red Wing, I don't know what it will be his next move, but it's Alex Tanguay for the Detroit Red Wings. Well, I never thought he would be a great coach, and the young men and the young kid players and the Detroit Red Wings love him a lot. The way he talked to them, he teach them. So I think it could become a great match between Lalonde and Tanguay, where Lalonde can teach him the experience to Tanguay, and Tanguay can teach him the fact he played many years in NHL. He was a great hockey player. We know he won the Stanley Cup with the Colorado and great career overall.
And if you look at the depth beyond that in the organization of development coaches, like Danny Cleary, Sean Horikoff, Yuri Fisher, there's DNA there of guys that really know how to help talented players find their game. And they still, I don't know, what did they do in the AHL? Did they keep the same coach? Did they keep Ben
Yeah,
Simon?
they did not move too much over there. Not a lot like Greenfins, yeah. And that's the key of Detroit, Michael, is that you've been there for many years, you know it more than me, but this kind of consistency at the American Hockey League year after year, how they've been for, it's not talking about 6 years, we're talking about 25, 30 years. It's always been that way. They never changed the culture of development, and this organization been with them for many years. I still remember the Griffin Rapids and everything. So I think they're doing very well.
Yeah, I really like what they've done. I think they are developing. They recognized, hey, we have a gap in skill, and he's moved to bring in that young skill, bring in some veteran skill that's underrated, and they've done everything they can to help these guys develop. I think the best example of that to me is Michael Rasmussen. This is a guy that's never been a good skater. Now suddenly you have a 6'6" centerman that has really nice soft hands, and he can skate finally, because he never was able to skate before. And that's the thing. Usually it's like he either can skate or not is the opinion, but that, they showed whatever they did with him, he's a great skater now. Like, what the heck happened?
But again, Michael, you have experience scouting for many years, you know exactly. But those the big guy, right? The 6'6", the 6'7", like the Tage Thompson, everything, like it's a little bit harder for them to skating properly, like the smallest one, right? And they take a little bit longer. Sometimes you can see Thompson that really get his year last season with 38 goals, and but I don't say Rasmussen can become a 35 goal, but I think his improvement, like you mentioned, he will help him to get that kind of possibility one day to become a center number 2 or 3 and stay many years in the NHL.
I agree. He could be how many guys have a 6'6" centerman with soft hands that can skate? And we saw last year, he's willing to take on anybody. He's not afraid of anybody. He knows he's big.
Yeah, absolutely right about that. And then we will ask move on to the next subject. And I want to talk about the LW, RW, but it should be LGRW. I make a mistake right there. Prospect. Okay. I know this organization, it sounds like the last 3-4 years, they've been one of the top best team in NHL with Prospect. Now they are knocking the door, but still have more in their organization. And Eiserman have always that fear, no fear to pick players where the people don't expect. And he is a winner of the lottery with Maurice Zaders, and now with Simon Edmondson. Why he never lucky the Detroit, Michael, the last 3 years. How many times you told me we cannot pick the top 3, but they pick the best 3 of the NHL draft every year.
I mean, Lucas Raymond, we saw at the beginning of the year what he was capable of doing, and he's just starting, Pierre. Like, when he gets used to a full 82-game schedule, he might take a little dip this year. We saw him take a dip at the end of last year, but you got to project him, and pretty soon it's going to be tough to keep this guy from scoring 80 points. Like, he is so intelligent. He will be the best player out of his draft. He was originally projected as the number 1 overall draft pick. He will be the best player out of that draft is my prediction. Like, I don't see anybody that has the upside, the intelligence, the speed, and I think that once he gets acclimated to the NHL schedule, he's going to be really hard to stop. Like, he draws people to him, he opens up space, he stretches out on the power play in ways they've never done, and opens up passing lanes. Like, he is such an intelligent player, and he can play with better and better players.
He makes people better, players better.
Absolutely. I was just gonna say, like, I don't think Dylan Larkin has the season he has without Lucas Raymond.
You're
Like, he's
absolutely
never
right.
been that
That's what
good.
I was going to tell you. That you're
Yeah,
absolutely right.
there's no way.
Yep. And that's making him a big impact and change everything. And
Dude,
he's not the only one. That's the scary thing about about the
no,
Detroit Red. When you have like Maurice Zeller just won the Calder Trophy. Maybe talk a little bit more about Maurice, whereas it's rare Germany players have that kind of success. Now Germany create more players like Leon
great players.
Tresadol. Now Tim Souza just get a big contract, and I watched video
JT
of Souza
Suzurka.
yesterday. Unbelievable.
He, listen, Tim Stützle is going to be the best player to his draft, maybe next to Raymond. Like, those two guys are going to vie for that top spot. We saw Stützle's got grit. He's fast. He's great in tight corners. He's really smart, and they just have like this like aggression without being stupid.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, I watched yesterday a video about like they show what he did, and people don't believe what he can become. They are like crazy because I said that he's
They're
so
crazy.
smart, Michael. He
So
realized
smart.
he don't have to. Why we said the best speed is when you go slower. It's not when you try to get faster. And you can see he's coming to the entrance zone, Michael. It looked like now. Wait, I have to look about this now. His confidence is increasing. He caught in front of the defenseman. He could pass the puck. No, he caught in front. He come back, have a chance, top shell, he score. So that's all about confidence and his development in the NHL. I'm telling you right now, this kid's going to be a great, great, great hockey player. And Ottawa Senator, he's going to be maybe, for my eyes, maybe the best player in the next 5 years.
Oh, I would agree with that, Pierre. I think that this is a guy that he just got paid a lot of money, but it might look cheap in a very short amount of time.
Michael, it will remind us the McKinnon contract. Whatever is at
Right.
8 million,
That's
we're going to say
exactly.
this, he should get 10, 12 at the year number 3,
Right.
4, 5 of his year. So, but let's go back about Maurice Zeller because I think we could talk for him forever because
Yeah,
he's
for sure.
unbelievable. Maybe the best defenseman in NHL the next couple of years.
Well, I was going to say, this is going to be a guy that, barring anything, he's big, he's mobile, he's smart, he's got offensive instincts, and he's mean. Like, he rubs players out with that, and he's gonna get thicker. Like, he's a big man. He's like 6'4", like maybe 205, 210. He's going to get bigger. He'll be a 225, 230 defenseman that can skate, and he'll rub guys out with will. We saw open ice hits. We saw him in the corners dominate one-on-one. This is a guy that knows what's going on in the play, and he's a good skater. Like, this is the complete package. This might be a 55, 65-point defenseman at some point.
Michael, for me, he reminds me a lot of Victor Ekman.
That's the funny thing. He's like, if you go back to when Victor Hedman was drafted, there was a big question of, did we make a mistake? Because he wasn't what everybody was projecting initially. But man, when he got physically mature, that changed real fast. And this guy's already better than Victor Hedman.
Oh my God, he can hit, Michael. He can, he love it. I just listened to him on the 30 to Todd. He said, look, me, listen, he said, me, I love to play in Detroit and have a great year overall because they make me better and they give me confidence. And they asked him about, what do you think about your physicality? He said, look, I learned, but I like to hit too, he said.
And we saw it in the AHL when before COVID and he went back overseas and became defenseman of the year and rookie of the year. In the AHL, he has an 18-year-old. He was rubbing guys out.
His cap control, Michael, for me is unbelievable. I think at that age, to have that kind of cap control, not many can do that because usually you are a little bit worried to make mistake, right? You don't want to jump on the plate because you don't want to get beat. His confidence is so high, he don't really care. He said, well, what's coming back? And then this offensive side, I never thought is going to be that way. The 3 versus 3, I couldn't shoot. And over time in NHL, he's maybe one of the best players on the ice when he played 3 versus 3.
Yeah. So I think my final thought on him is, you mentioned the gap control. He has an active stick, but then he's got a homing beacon of a brain where if you come within and you beat him on the stick, you think you've beaten him, that's more dangerous for you because he's going to clock you. He does not. He will separate you from the puck every time.
He recovered very well with his skating, Michael. If he get beat with
So
stick,
good.
a great defenseman because he can have that kind of skating where they make a big run after that.
So speaking of big men, there's a big man in Traverse City right now, and his name is Elmer Soderblom. And this guy was a 6th round draft pick, Pierre. He's 6'8", and the comment of Danny Cleary, the development coach, is he's ripped. So Elmer Soderblom is shown he has high skill level. He's in phenomenal shape. They say he might be the best shape of any prospect that they have, and he's the biggest. He's 6'8", about 238 pounds, and he's got skill, Pierre. He scored 20 goals against men in the Swedish league last year.
Isn't the
I
one
would not be
scored?
shocked.
Is it him or Soderblom for that reason scored a goal between legs and at the World Junior Championship
2 years ago?
2 years ago? Is it him?
Yeah, that's him. Yeah, he's so good. They're gonna have a hard time keeping him out of the NHL, Pierre. If Philip Zadina does not click, you're going to see this guy because he can play left or right wing. Oh, shock. Another guy that can play left or right wing. And the biggest thing Danny Cleary said, it's puck protection. That's it. And what we saw with him, he's very willing to use his body. He's not afraid.
From net, Michael?
He's like, Zdeno Chara with wheels.
Exactly.
That's like ridiculous.
Then, you talk about...
he's scary.
Let's talk about the prospect, but they've been there, like they are maybe now reached the 20, 22 years old. Talking about Joe Veleno, Philip Zadina. What do you expect from them now? They are at the point where now they give confidence. I think they signed Zadina for 3 years at 1.8, if I can recall it a couple of weeks ago. But what's the next for them? Because I think like Rasmussen is another one part of this kind of players been drafted like 3-4 years ago.
Yeah. Zadina is a bit of an enigma. I think we all expected him to come in and be a 25 goal scorer in the NHL. The word on him is that he's not willing to pay the price to get to scoring areas. Like you see, he's got a great shot and great timing from that dot, but he is not Alexandre Ovechkin. So I think where he's comfortable from scoring goals, it's easy to defend him in the NHL. Maybe not in other leagues, but in the NHL, those opportunities aren't going to be there. He's highly skilled, Pierre. He's very good with the puck. He's a great skater. He's defensively responsible. But he's got to figure out a way to get to scoring areas at the right time to score because I think a lot of the ways he scores will not work in the NHL. So that's unfortunate because I was really excited about when they drafted Zadina. He's probably better than the guys they drafted him, including Kotkaniemi and Barrett Hayes.
That year, Michael, remember he was the top 3 best players on that draft on the the prediction he dropped like 5 or 6 after that, and but unfortunately he need to become, like you just said, to know the next level, and then possible the 3 year maybe helping him, and but again it's getting closer. Is the door is getting closer because the spot the 12 forward is not like it was before that, so will be another one. Let's talk about Joe Veleno. That's someone he maybe have some kind of highlight last season. I think he's, he get a little bit better overall.
This is a guy, Pierre, that, he had a lot of hype coming out of Quebec. He was the first overall draft pick. I think he was an exceptional player status in Quebec, and he was just physically mature at a young age. But if you look at him, he is a big body. He can skate. He's smart. He wins faceoffs, and he had 8 goals last year in a limited role.
Yeah.
So, and he played very well in the AHL. So I am happy with his progress. And I think if you played him as a third line center, you would have no issues with him. He's very capable of playing with highly skilled players, and he does not make them worse. In some ways, he makes them better. He'll do the things they don't do. And I just think this is an excellent player. If he doesn't work out in Detroit, he'll work out somewhere else, and they can use him as a trade bait. Because I think the guy that you really got to keep your fingers crossed on is Jonathan Berggren. Jonathan Berggren has the upside, the intelligence, the speed, the puck skills, everything you would want from a number 1 center in the NHL, worst case number 2. And you look at the AHL season he had last year, the question in my mind is whose job can he steal? And if Jonathan Berggren comes in and plays the way he's capable, this is where you start talking about, do I move Andrew Kopp to the wing? Do I move Andrew Kopp to the third line? And that's what they hope happens, because if that happens, you've got a star center. And frankly, I still don't believe Dylan Larkin is a number one center in the NHL. If this guy's skill translates with another year of training, another year of his first year of NHL experience, you might have a number one center to play with Lucas Raymond. And
What is missing for Berggren to make the next step, the next level? What is missing, you think, for him?
He's not an obvious physical specimen. So you look at him and he's maybe a little bit undersized, but he's like maybe 5'10 and a half, 5'11. And I think that's the only thing where you're like, well, who do I match him up against? I've got some other big bodies. Like Larkin is fast, but Larkin kind of has one speed. And Larkin's not a creative player, but he's able to be, made better, in my opinion, again, by his line mate. Jonathan Berggren has an incredible hockey IQ. He's got all the skill and speed that you would want, but he's not maybe, if you match him up against the other team's top centerman, that is a big question. If you match him up against a checking line in the NHL, that is a question. So I just think it's a matter of, can this guy play center at the NHL level? Worst case, does he move to the wing? And I think those are unknowns at this point because he hasn't even had a sniff. But I think what we're going to see is he's going to light it up at some point. And you're going to find out. If not, then I'll be very surprised because he was like the best player in Grand Rapids, in my opinion.
That would be really interesting to follow him for sure. There any other prospect, or we can move on to the next?
Well, I think just the other one I was going to mention, they have Kirill Tudiev, who comes back. This is the Belarusian player. He's in Traverse City. He's highly skilled, and I think he was a bit of a revelation last year in Traverse City. So they're going to keep an eye on him. Albert Johansson, everybody is projecting as a top 4 defenseman in the NHL. This is another example of a guy that they drafted late. He had a phenomenal year in Sweden last season. And this guy's a great skater, Pierre. He has got phenomenal wheels, above average skater. He's smart. He's physically mature. And people are not necessarily, they're kind of low key looking at him going, this is a top 4 defenseman in the NHL that we got like in a later round. So that's another player that's in Traverse City right now. And I think he'll start in the AHL, but I would not be surprised to see him finish in the NHL. The other guy to keep an eye on is Donovan Sabrango. We saw Sabrango he played in the AHL the last 2 years, which was ahead of schedule. And then we saw him play in the World Junior Championship. The knock on him is he may not have the offense that you would want, but he could be like Gustav Lindstrom, where he's a very reliable 5'6" defenseman. He was an integral part of the World Junior team, and he's very, very reliable in the AHL. So we got to keep an eye on him.
Yeah,
and don't sleep on Emil Viro. The Finnish defenseman played very well at the World Juniors, and they think that maybe he's better than they thought.
And you talked about 10 minutes about front players for the organization. Let's give you an idea that the Detroit Red Wings, their scouting is a scout. The way they scout is really power over there. They've been this way for many, many years, and you have to give credit for the Detroit Red Wings, where the prospect has a way to come here, and the future is still bright, and the Detroit Red Wings, Michael. Let's move on for the next subject of the day. And I want to talk about maybe 1 or 2 players can bounce back where you expect they was supposed to have a better year last year. And maybe the one we maybe have a good year, but maybe regress overall. Because maybe the new players or whatsoever, what do you think, who could become those kind of candidates?
Well, the guy that we're excited to see is Vrana. Vrana might be the best player on the Detroit Red Wings this year. If he is healthy for an entire season, he did not miss a beat when he came back from injury. He had a very unfortunate start to the season. And this guy, Pierre, looks like a 40-goal scorer.
Michael, I have to tell you a story. He's the only player, Michael, live downtown in Detroit.
Is he?
He's the only one. And they ask him why. I don't like to wake up early in the morning.
That's okay. That's not a good sign. But although I will say, depending where he lives, there's a square block around Little Caesars. It's beautiful.
Oh, he loved it. He said, look, this is the best place to be. He said, anyway, we're not there a lot of time, but he said, why to drive 40 minutes and the snow and wake up in the morning, everything, when I can sleep another hour almost compared to anybody. He said, I enjoy to live downtown. I said, everybody, I tell them to stay around, and nobody would listen to me.
Pierre, he's right. We were in Detroit last year, we went to the Wings game, and honestly, the downtown area right around Little Caesars is all redeveloped. The hotels are really nice. They have a beautiful aloft there that's an old, beautiful building. They have a lot of little record shops. They have a lot of little bars and restaurants.
The ring,
The
Michael,
Detroit,
is maybe one of the best for me. It may be the top best
yeah.
three ring in NHL.
What's better than that rink?
Michael, you can come inside the ring because you know Detroit is not like Dallas or Anaheim or Arizona where you can tailgate outside. You tailgate inside in
Yeah,
Detroit. They have so many
yeah,
bar and restaurant around inside. I've been there like 2 years ago, and I was impressed the way they built that ring over there.
and you're right down by the baseball field. You've got the Fox Theater there where there's always like entertainment and musical acts, and it's you know it's very
Transportation, Michael, is easy to go there.
yeah. You got the People Mover, right? Like the Sky Car, whatever you call that, the monorail.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a neat area. You got the casino near there, which you probably want to avoid, but
Yeah, but it's just beside that. That's what I stay when I stayed
yeah,
3 days, so I really was impressed. But
great.
what do you think about the bounce back player? Like I know they have a lot of players have a good year last season. You know, the Perdozy, the Larkin, the Zeter, the Raymond.
Yeah,
But one player maybe
Susie.
said, you know, we expect a little bit more. What it will be?
We're gonna find out how good Nedeljkovic is or is not. So he started out okay during last season. I don't think their defense got worse as the season went on, and you saw that as other teams got better, they struggled, and he really struggled. Like there was a month there, he might have had a 5+ goals against average in that month. So I think that we've got to see, can this guy pick up 35, 40 games? They really need him to at least play 35. If he can do that and the other guy can, play 47, they're in pretty good shape. Because I really think Ville Husso has the frame and the athleticism to do it. And if he stays healthy, they're in good shape. Nedeljkovic, if he's a really good backup, then that's what they want. If he picks up more than that, great. But I think if you rely on him more than that, you're in trouble. But I think, he might be out too. Like he might be gone.
But
He's
that's the reason he have a
got 1
better
year left.
year with Carolina because he was number two with that. He was always coming back like a reliever, right? He will show up and then he would make great game.
Yep. Short NHL season, short sample, and he played very well. And I just don't know. He's not a big goalie. It's going to be a real question mark in my mind if here beyond this year. But they look for him to play well, and if he doesn't, then they're going to go in another direction.
You follow the team better than me, Michael. I understand that because honestly, I do Montreal, but I could be wrong here, and I know I could because I'm not follow them too much. But do you believe Philip Ronek have a year so compared to the year before that, where I believe have a better year, or I'm completely wrong here?
He played a different role, Pierre, and I think Moritz Seider put him in the chair of being number 2, 3. And he's a right shot defenseman like Seider. So he immediately slot to the second pairing.
Okay.
Like this guy's been in the NHL not very long. This is a second round draft pick. He is physically strong. He skates really well. He can shoot the puck. He can run a power play. And if he's on your second power play unit, you're very happy.
So I think he's maybe at the right chair. That's a great comments about this. Absolutely right, because
that's what it is. I don't think he played poorly at all. He's a guy that the coach relies upon. He can play 18, 20 minutes reliably, and I don't think he's mistake prone, and he's got some offense. So I think they're very happy with him. I think that he has less focus just because of who's around him.
What about a forward can become a bounce back if you have one of them? If you maybe said this player could become like he should, or he have another great year overall.
Well, I mean, I think we'll find out. We've got 1 year left on Bertuzzi's contract. Is he in their plans long term? I still don't believe Larkin is a number 1 centerman. He's been a good captain. He's a fast player. I think that his numbers are inflated because of who he's played with. At some point you go, is this guy going to get us to the next level or not? And that's a question in my mind. He is better suited to me to be a second line centerman, but there's a lot of guys on that team that can play that role now. So I think that's a big question in my mind. Does he hit the same numbers or not? I think the guy that you look to is, you got to say, does Jonathan Berggren have that jump? And I think the guy that there's a lot who's going to lose a lot of ice time is Pius Suter. Like, I think it's going to be very tough for a coach to want to play Pius Suter in the number 2 or number 3 center role when you got Joe Veleno, you got Jonathan Berggren, you got Andrew Kopp, you've got Rasmussen. Like, why would you want to play Pius Suter in that role? And if you move him to the wing, can he perform the same way?
That was my plan.
And
I
we're
was
missing
going to
one guy.
mention to you, Michael.
What about Robbie Fabry?
He didn't play all year last season, Michael. That's maybe a one can bounce back stronger, better. He should be the top 9 players for this organization.
Robbie Fabry is DNA wise what Stevie Yzerman would want. He's a character player. He's a little bit undersized. We've seen a lot of knee injuries. I think this is his 3rd knee injury, Pierre. He's had major.
Did he play with David Perron?
Yes.
I think so too, right? Because they came from the Blues organization.
He did. Yeah. So he played with Perron, but the problem with him has been health.
Yeah.
And I've watched him since he's 13, Pierre. He would face off against Connor McDavid. He's a 96 born player. McDavid's a 97. And these guys were the 2 best players at their age group, along with Sam Bennett. And you could see them all the way up. Like, he's always been able to produce offensively. He's got a history with Bertuzzi. He's got a history with Pius Suter. However, at some point, you got to go, okay, is this guy a 20-goal guy that can play 80 games? Because if he can't play 80 games, you've got to put someone in that can. And I think it's going to be really tough for him with an Elmer Soderblom, a Kubalik, like these bigger, talented players that can score big time. So I think we're going to find out if Robbie Fabry is able to get into more games. I hope he does. I really love the kid, but it's going to be tough.
On the defense side, do you believe, or maybe not defensive, let me turn my question about, the second year in NHL or any sport, usually a player have a good first year. They maybe go down a little bit or regress a little bit. Do you expect the same way with Lucas Raymond and Maurice Zader, or you don't see that at all?
The law of averages says that they'll both have a little bit of a rough second year. I look at the talent level, and that's why I kind of said at the beginning about Lucas Raymond. Like, he's a smaller player, but he's kind of thick. He might regress a little bit at the beginning and then show up at the end, because there's going to be a lot more competition, and he's trying to make it so he can play 80 games the way he did 50. So it would not surprise me to see him come in, have a little bit of a struggle at the beginning, but then finish off strong, and then the rest of his career is smooth sailing. And that's what I kind of think with him. Seider, I have a hard time picturing this guy not being a stud.
Me too. Me too. Me too.
I think it's going to be tough. He's got more support. Who's going to mess with Moritz Seider with Ben Sherratt on his line?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right about this. I think
for an era where there's not tough guys, Ben Sherratt's a tough player.
Yeah. We have about maybe 12, 13 more minutes to finish this show, Michael. So, sure. We sometimes prediction is not always we are right? Because we assume and we never know. But not only playoff, and I know I put playoff yes or no, but maybe talk a little bit more the season, what your expectation of the season. We talk about the players, individual players, and the prospect. But now, as a team together, the chemistry possible, what are your expectations overall for this team?
They're still in a tough division in the Atlantic. Florida, I think, will fall back a little bit, but they're still going to be very, very difficult to play against. Toronto, I don't think is going to have any problem getting 100 points in this league. And don't count out Tampa. Like, there's nothing that says Tampa is not going to be very, very difficult and a 100-point team. So you got 300-point teams ahead of you. They're kind of battling it out with Boston, who's brought back Bergeron and they brought back Krejci. They've got young goaltenders and other young players in the system. Jake DeBrusk seems like he's kind of popped through. They've got a weird coaching change there, so that'll be interesting to see in Boston. But I think that, if they're battling it out for a playoff spot, it's against Boston, Buffalo, and Ottawa, and maybe Montreal. And you've got to look at the moves that Ottawa made, and you think, wow, that could be a wild card team. And I think that they're probably still ahead of Detroit a little bit. There might be some questions in goal, but if you look at the record of their number one goalie last year, I think they're okay. And, if they have, there might be some defensemen that need time there, but how do you compete? You got Stützle, you got Norris, You've got Kachuk. You've got some players there, and now they brought in DeBrincat, and they've brought in some other pieces that'll really help them. So Ottawa's going to be
Giroud.
very tough. Giroud, like, I mean, we're not. Let's not pretend like that team is not significantly improved.
But
And
before you,
Buffalo,
Michael, I'm sorry to cut you, but before you give us an answer, do you believe, and NHL did not happen a lot, they have 27 points, Detroit and Ottawa, they finished like 1 point behind, or 27, 28,
yeah,
both team, right? To behind, Boston finished 4. With all the injury they have, the Marchand, the McEnroy, the Krejcik, everything like that, now they have Pavel Zacha. I think we don't talk enough for the Boston Bruins as a center. DeBrusque have a good year overall. But do you believe the fact they will be not like they was before Boston, and the fact Ottawa and Detroit are a little bit better, they have enough gap between both teams to make that 27 to be at the same level and give a chance for Detroit or Ottawa to pass Boston, or it's too much, 27 points to catch up?
I don't. I think that Boston's going to be good again, and it really depends on Krejci, which I think he'll be very good, and it really depends on Bergeron. And we know he's had some kind of crazy questionable injuries, but that, I still think they're like a 95 to 100 point team if things all work out. They might not be 110, but if you look at their numbers last year, Pierre, they had 107 points. But what's weird is there was a 35 goal differential. So it was like they scored 255 goals and they let in 220.
And honestly, we know, Michael, Ottawa, Buffalo, Montreal, and Detroit was not great, and they have only 3 teams. So that's the point. Maybe not make the big, like it's really.
That's what you gotta catch.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that now let's not forget, like, if you're competing for a wild card, you're going to have to go up against, like, will the Islanders be resurgent? They're playing in the new barn since the beginning of the year. They need a big year from Matthew Barzal. Is that a team? Is Washington a team that's playing for a wild card?
Do you expect them without Wilson and Backstrom, they can beat that wild card?
That's the question, right? Like, I think they have Connor McMichael, looks like he stepped up. Who is he? They brought in another centerman, right?
Connor Brown.
Brown.
And Strong for Chicago.
And then they totally changed the goaltending. So I think it's going to be a little bit different team. And I think Backstrom, like, we're underestimating how great this guy is. Kuznetsov, though, has the ability to step up, so that's going to be a question. But I think that they're in the mix for a wild card, right? I think that the question will be, can Detroit shore up enough to catch Washington, to catch Boston? And honestly, I put Ottawa ahead of both of them.
And then we don't talk yet. You did not talk about New Jersey Devils, and you did not talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets. 2 teams like Detroit, Ottawa make some big splash during the summer with Palat and New Jersey, and Columbus, Goodrow, Johnny Goodrow now over there. So it's the 2 teams, we cannot consider them like anymore, like at the bottom automatically, and division like it was before.
Like, Philadelphia has Tortorella now. If you have a healthy Couturier and you have a healthy Hayes,
you still have a lot of old over there. Unfortunately, they're going to lose like John Farabee, but still, it should be a little bit better in Philadelphia.
They can be a pain in the neck, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be super competitive. So teams like that are big and heavy, and they do have some talent. I think that they're missing a few pieces, and I don't like the way the defense is constructed. But you have a coach that can shore up those differences. So it's, their risk, right? Like, I think Detroit's ahead of them, but maybe not.
Yeah, I don't see them to make it, honestly. I think
it's going to be tough.
I think it will be hard for them. At the end of the day, Michael, we know every year we always plug 1 team or 2 teams. Like the Islanders is a great example. The healthy side last year, right? The Calgary have a good year last year because it was healthy overall. And that's because they're healthy, you become a better team. But that help on your standing in the NHL at some point. That's part, again, for, like you just said, I think you're right. Like, Detroit have to compete, not only Boston and Ottawa anymore. You have to talk about Buffalo, Michael. I think it's another team. It's another good team where they maybe not have the great goaltender, but you have to give them what they did for the last couple of years now with the draft and their trade for Jack Eichel, where Alex Stock and Peter Creighton, they're grabs, and their prospect, Michael, is pretty good. We don't talk about Jack Quinn yet.
Well, we didn't talk about Jack Quinn. We also didn't talk about Pierre. There's a player that played in the AHL last year for Buffalo's organization, and the coaches referred to him as a unicorn. Do you know who that was?
Is it JJ Peterka?
JJ Peterka. They think JJ Peterka is better than Jack Quinn.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? But
Yeah.
if you look, they say this is a player. Do not sleep on him. We think that he will step immediately in the
At
NHL.
the World
He had
Junior
60
Championship, Michael, remember, he was so
good.
great.
Great.
Yeah. I remember we were watching together. I still that year we was watching Peterka. I said, wow, this, because he was not supposed to be one of the best of the best for them. So really interesting. I think it's a great one. I think Buffalo missing, they are really young at the defensemen, veterans over there. They miss Goaltending. Like I don't think so. You can win with Anderson, Comrie, whatsoever. Luke Conan could be. They have two good goalies over there, Michael. First is Devon Levi.
Yeah.
For Northeastern. They have another one. Is a Finland
Luukkonen.
goalie.
Yeah, Luukkonen.
Cortillo or Portillo.
Yeah, Pekka Ukko Luukkonen or the other one?
No, the other one. Eric Portillo or Frederic.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Right.
You have a number, Michael. I think he's on NCAA. I can recall him.
You're right.
He's unbelievable. The people forget him completely because so many good prospect goaltender. And I think is the team can make a trade for one of the three goaltender we just talked about to get something better in return. And he's concerned a bit like the next, Dawson Wolf is a top 10 prospect goaltender in NHL, but Portillo is one of them for sure. For the Buffalo Sabres. So it's an organization, again, the next 3 years, Michael, they're going to grow.
Anytime.
And I think it'll be interesting. The next 3, 4, 5 years, possible, the Tampa, Florida, and Toronto are going to be a little bit lower. And then you're going to get the Buffalo, the Detroit, and the Boston around. And then you're going to get the Ottawa Senator. And then Montreal going to slip slowly between everything for the next 3 years. And it's going to be another 10 years, Atlantic Division, Michael. Going to be a strong division overall in NHL for sure. We are almost at the end of the show, Michael. We want to talk about, first of all, I miss you. I really miss you. I miss to do something like that together and talk about this. We're launching something new this year where we try to bring more people and to be a part of this big family we are and we become. And we start a new show, what's called the HN Team Report NHL, and you're going to be in charge of the Detroit Red Wings, and usually every week you're going to bring some update, preview, and everything what's going around the Detroit Red Wings, and I think we should do more, me and you together, some like a 1 weekly hour about the Detroit Red Wings. I think it would be great to do that together, but that's what you're going doing, focusing this year with the Hockey Nation. I should not say you're not coming for as a panelist because you've been with us the evening sometime, but I think you're going to bring a great, I think people at the end of this show is going to realize, we go through the 1 hour, this organization, I think a lot of fans in this Hockey Nation Live show like the KLS, love them. The MSU is another one. We have a couple of fans love the Detroit Red Wings. It's a big, 6-player team in the franchise at the beginning of the original team. And then a lot of people follow the Detroit Red Wings. But you will be work with us about that team all year long, right?
Yeah, so we'll do a weekly update on them, and sometimes we'll be able to go live together to do that, and otherwise we'll have a kind of summary of what games they've got, who's up and who's down. So I'm really excited to do that. My heart's close to Detroit with my cousin's role there over the last 3 decades, or well, maybe it's more than that. Gee, it might be 4 decades with the Red Wings. So, geez, that went fast. Because I was like 10. Yeah. And I appreciate you being patient with me last year because I kind of took on some extra, career responsibilities, and that really very suddenly took me out of the morning show, unfortunately. But my time is a lot more flexible than it was last year, so I look forward to participating if I have to. I'm very willing to do daily participation in some
Well,
way.
something you can maybe do is like maybe the morning show back again, and then maybe 3 times per week, something like that. And then maybe because
Yep,
me, I cannot do all, but you can consider that
I can
show in
take
the morning. You can pick it up that one or that. I
sure,
think that'd be great. And we have about 2 minutes,
no problem.
Michael. I want you to finish with this because I think it's very important. The WHL, you scout over there for every civil state. You just come
Yep.
back for the training camp over there. Just in 2 minutes, give us a little bit what your expectation for the Everett for the upcoming year. Maybe one or two players you're impressed, and maybe they are one or two, of course, maybe going to be the NHL draft 2023, or maybe more later.
Well, we have some veteran. We have a really strong 2002 draft class. So we've got Jackson Berezowski. He scored 46 goals for us, Pierre, last year, and he had some unfortunate injury. Like we had a lot of injuries at the end of the season last year, and it really kind of snake bit us in the last 2 weeks of and even the playoffs. Like it really unfortunately ended our year. So we've got a healthy Jackson Berezowski. He looks like, he could be a 45, 55 goal scorer this year. It'll be interesting to watch. Ryan Hofer is back, and we have, I think, 7 players in NHL camps, Pierre. So we
Wow.
have Braden. Yeah, so there's a lot of players. Not all are drafted, but some are just attending the camps. So I think that speaks volumes. The player that, I mean, last year, I don't know if you understand how good this guy was, and I've been talking about him for a long time, is Olen Zellweger. And we saw him at the under 18s of the Halinka, and I kept telling Pierre, all right, if you like Brant Clark, this guy's better. And we saw last year, Brant Clark didn't make Team Canada, and Olen Zellweger did. And he's the number one defenseman on Team Canada in the gold medal winning year. I realized Russia wasn't there.
Couple of
Pierre,
good
he was
game, a couple of good goal over there. He's a draft, by the way, for people don't know. He's drafted by the Anaheim Ducks.
Anaheim Ducks. Yeah, second round pick, and they
Yeah,
got the Steel Pierre of the century because he tied Alex Pietrangelo, and I can't remember the other defenseman. Might have been Drew Doughty for the all-time points by a defenseman in a World Junior Championship on Team Canada. So people don't understand. First of all, his hockey IQ is elite. His skating is elite. His physical training off the ice, Pierre, is second to none, and he's an amazing kid. Like Pierre, I'm walking down the street on the way back to the arena during camp, and Olin sees me like maybe half a block up, and he points and he waves at me. He's like, "Hi, Olin." He's just a great kid, and he's a great teammate. He had 78 points in 60 games last year, Pierre, in the WHL as a defenseman.
so if he's not the Anaheim Ducks, they don't keep him, right? Because he's still only 19 years old, turned 20, right? So he have to come back with Everett, right?
Right. He can't go to the AHL. So, I mean, if you look at Anaheim, they've brought in Kulikov. They already have Jamie Drysdale. They've got a lot of bodies ahead of him.
Beaulieu is a PTO.
Boyo's a PTO. I think it would be hard pressed for him to stay. I think that he would come back. If he does, we have another defenseman, Pierre, Aiden Sutter, that looks like he's as fast as Olen Zellweger. Like he doesn't have the hockey IQ and the skills at high speed, but he can really skate now, like phenomenal skater. We're going to be really tough to score goals on.
Yep. I think you, Michael, your internet just blow out, Michael, unfortunately, about this one over there. Guys, we are at the end of the show anyway. It's not end of the world. Michael have to, obviously, is right now in Charlotte, Carolina, in the hotel. So that's a part of sometimes the internet stop. But we're definitely talking more about Michael. Like I said, Michael will be a little bit more consistency this year with the Hockey Nation Live show. He's been with me for 3 years, and Michael, he's great on scouting, on knowledge about hockey, the prospect, and definitely he's going to talk about the Detroit Red Wings for the next couple of weeks and year number 3 for the Hockey Nation Live show. So on that way, my friend, we complete the great show with Michael DeVellano. I can't wait to see each one of you. Until the next time, we want to remind everybody, of course, you are awesome. You are amazing. You are the best. And remember, you have. Thank you so much for watching another Hockey Nation live show. Until the next time, remember, you have greatness inside of you. Have an amazing, blessing day, everybody. And of course, we love you, people.